Welcome to the magical realm of seeking the light of 1,000 suns. Join us on this journey as we delve into the mystical world of eclectic witchcraft. Brought to you by Maya Sky Rika and Gia Storm. Together we share our eclectic tips and tricks with listeners at any stage of their chosen magical path. Get ready for engaging discussions, diverse knowledge, and a community that embraces the sparks of magic in your life. Please follow, like, and share our content so we can reach as many like minds as possible. Don't forget to check out our enriching extras available on our Facebook group and website. Follow the links in our description or go to www.seekingthelight1000suns.com. Again, that's www.seekingthelight1000suns.com. Welcome to another episode of Seeking the Light of 1,000 Suns. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Sharneal Wolverton Sehon. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. She is a multidisciplinary expert that uses natural, spiritual, and healing sciences for individuals on their wellness journeys. But she's also an author of multiple books. She also helps people tap into their intuition and deepen their connection with the source. And she also has her own 82 card tarot or oracle deck. So let's welcome Dr. Sharneal. Thank you for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I always really know where to begin with that. Basically, I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm a speaker. I write books and do blogs, and I see people in real life in my practice, as well as teaching and doing conferences and retreats and what have you to teach on more of a mass, level with more people at one time. But yeah, that's about kind of what I do.
I love that. I love that the whole workshop idea and sharing. There's so much, I hate that cliche word gatekeeping, but there's so much of it. There's so much information out there that people do not, they don't spread, they don't share, and I love that. And I love your practice is amazing because it has like so many of these different things that you don't hear a lot about. And like ozone therapy, for example. Personally, I have never ever heard of that.
Oh, really?
No, I've heard some things about some of these other services, but can you tell us a little bit about some of these services that you do? Because um, some of these things I find very, very interesting. They're very amazing. Um, I mean, that some of these are kind of exciting, like trauma transformation. Um, the conscious language. Can you tell, like, yeah, share with what you do because I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I like to listen to what people say and watch body language and kind of see if we can find any snags in conscious language on how to redirect someone back into their miracle, their harmony, their alignment. Um, we tend to tell on ourselves quite often just through language, and or body language. And so that's a good way for me to kind of detect a little bit more and go deeper into what people's belief systems are and or what their subconscious belief systems are, because a lot of times people may not think they believe something, but they're presenting it in a different way, and we can determine that and detect that. I do really love biofeedback as well, because we could get diagnostics pretty deep just by listening to what they call evox, which is your voice, and or finding things within the field of the biofield of a person and seeing what's going on or what's missing or what needs to be strengthened in order to have that alignment within the body, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Um, but, and also in our practice, we have all kinds of biohacking materials, or technology. I kind of like to have what I call a lavender lightning approach, meaning the lavender being more natural, organic things, from the earth, things that God has given us to utilize harmony in the body and to get that alignment. But then also there's amazing biofeedback, meaning lightning, Tesla technology that people can use and serves really, really well in helping the body as well, not just mentally and physically, but even emotionally. And, we have ozone therapy, we have red light therapy, sauna, and, infrared sauna. PEMF is really good, hyperbaric chamber. I do live blood analysis. There's a lot of other things, like I said, that jumpstart the body and flood the body with oxygen to get into a better heightened state of energy, ATP. It helps the body to cleanse better and faster. And also, just we heal on our own anyway. So when we don't heal on our own, we have to look, or we don't have to, but I like to look and invite people to look to see, well, what's causing the block to that healing. And it could be a parasite or parasites. It could be fungus or mold. It could be environmental. It could be maybe there's sensitivities to foods that we're eating, or maybe there's some gut issues going on where you're not really having the best like support gut wise. And, so I like to look at like all of the things and kind of determine what is best for the person specifically, because I don't think everybody is a one size fit all kind of customer or patient. I think very much on personalization and customizing specific remedies and or harmonies for the person's, depending on what the situation is. It also is determined by location, because obviously if you don't live here in person, you may not be able to have access to some of the things that we have here in my practice. But with biofeedback, we can do that remote. And so we can really dig deep with biofeedback and look into different things like hormones and sleep patterns and even chiropractic or emotions, or we can look to see if maybe the cell phone or the Wi-Fi is, messing up your cells, or maybe you're using the wrong cleaning supplies in the house, and that's causing some hormone disruption, or, maybe you need a liver cleanse or go to bed early or get more grounded or sleep, or maybe there's some deficiencies in a certain vitamin. We can look at minerals. We look at really everything. There's like 30 different aspects of biofeedback that we can dive into to see like, hey, how can we work on this? And then the cool thing with biofeedback is it's not just diagnostic. Like if you go get an x-ray, you're going to get results and say like, hey, this is what's wrong, and you're going to know what's wrong, but it doesn't fix you by getting the x-ray. With biofeedback, we're not only getting diagnostics to see, hey, what are some areas you need a little more support in, or let's take some things away so the body can heal on its own and a better high powered ability, but also we customize frequencies based on what the diagnostics say and then send them back to the person. So they're already feeling better just by doing the biofeedback, bio meaning two. So you're getting the diagnostics and then we're sending them back to you. So it's not just a one side kind of X-ray MRI thing, but we're also getting solutions for you at the same time. It usually takes about 3 to 5 biofeedback scans to really get entrainment. Most biofeedback, they say do 10 to 20, but with the technology that I have, I've been able to get that down to a lower number just because I will look at the diagnostics from a naturopathic point of view as well. And if it says something like, hey, sleep more, or there's some sleep disruption, then I'm going to, as a naturopath, say, you know what, hey, go to bed early. And, or if you're having trouble sleeping, maybe take a melatonin or use some lavender or, you know, use some blockers on your computer or maybe not be on your cell phone right before bed. So you're able to get melatonin naturally to go to sleep, or maybe you need to get more grounded, or all the things that I would look at as a naturopath to maybe give you some homework. So you're working on things, I'm working on things, and we're getting there faster versus I know a lot of people who do biofeedback and they're not naturopaths. They're just practitioners in biofeedback, which isn't bad. I'm just saying, I know I went to biofeedback people myself in the beginning days, and they would just hook you up to a machine. Back then, you had to be in person, and they would hook you up. And there is still some of that, but then there's better technology now where you could do it long distance. Um, and no one would tell me anything. No one would say, this is what's going on. This is what we're working on. I would just be sitting there and I wouldn't know what they're working on or what opportunities I had to help make it faster. And so when you're only relying on biofeedback and zero feedback as far as actual homework, it does take longer for that entrainment because there's nothing to anchor in the frequencies. But if you're doing some things on your own, then we can cross those things off the list because it's like, okay, we don't have to work on sleep anymore because you're doing it. We don't have to work on vitamin D anymore because you're doing it. We don't have to work on grounding anymore because you're going outside doing it. So all of that excess energy that could have worked towards those things can now focus on the things that maybe aren't as fixable with homework. And those things can be crossed off the list faster because they're done. And it's like, okay, we've eliminated, maybe getting more water in your system or getting more grounded, or, you fill in the blank of the homework and really zeroed in on the things that can't be as easily done through sleep or taking a vitamin, if that makes sense. So we can cut down 20 sessions to maybe 5 or 6 because we're both working towards that. And I really like that anyway, because it puts more responsibility back on the patient to take some ownership and some choices that they're making, and hopefully make some new choices that are more habitual and a part of their practice, because those aren't bad things to go to bed at night during a reasonable hour and get that HGH going, or to get grounded and get outside and get in nature, or to drink more water, or take a vitamin D, or whatever those things could be that, might pipe up, or go to a chiropractor, or, you know, detox the liver or something like that. Things like that are really good to do anyway.
Right. And if they're not invested in their own wellness, what are they doing here, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
I know that kind of sounds a little negative. I didn't really mean it that way, but I meant like if you're truly on the path to healing, you're gonna have work that needs to be put in. And I find that amazing that there's so many of these multidisciplinary approaches from what it sounds like, if I'm understanding correctly, can be done remotely. So not only are you using multiple multidisciplinary techniques for treatment, but you're also using them for diagnostic, right? Wow. And I think this really puts a flame on me because I think about how many times that I go to medical professionals and to even get them to even listen to me at all in the visit, and how painful that is because you're using your time, you're using your money, you're using your voice, and it feels like everything was not worth it. Now, I am only speaking from my own experience. There are probably other people out there that feel the same, but there are probably also many people out there that have had great experiences. Um, but I've had a really, really, really long road of multiple health issues, and it seems like a lot of the responses that I've gotten when you advocate for yourself are, well, what makes you think that? Why are
Yeah,
you asking for that test?
right.
Like my presence is a waste of their time.
Yes. And they're quick. Like I've literally had people just this week. I had a friend of mine that had a really bad back problem, just woke up with it. And it wasn't like a car accident or anything. And I was like, I knew he was going to the doctor. And I was like, keep me posted. Let me know how things are going. And when he got home, he called me and I was like, well, what did they say? And he was like, they gave me pain medicine and they saw me 15 minutes. And I was like, but what was the problem? And he was like, they didn't even check. They didn't ask me anything. They didn't even, he said that he asked for x-rays and MRI, like all this stuff. And like, and then I have had people who they do every test under the book. And if they are lucky enough to have insurance, maybe their deductible is $5,000. So they'll blow like all this money on stuff and really don't even get answers. So I get a lot of people who have been in the circus of going through all the doctors and the referrals and paying all the money and the time and not being heard and never finding out answers. And that's kind of why I got into this, is because I myself dealt with being very, very ill for about 7 years and went to multiple doctors and I was on multiple medications and still felt like crap. And so I ended up having to be, like you said, my own advocate and figure it out and reverse engineer my own stuff. And I did end up going back to school for that. But then honestly, what I learned in school, I'm not even utilizing so anyone could do, the research and find the answers that I did and still be ahead of the game. Um, but yeah, the people who come to me, a lot of the people who come to me have exhausted all of their money, their time. We haven't been heard. They're in and out. They sit in a waiting room longer than they actually have time with the real doctor.
That's
And they're just like no eye contact, whole time writing the script, like barely boom. Not everyone's like that. Thank God there are really good doctors as well. And I'm not anti doctors at all. I'm just
right,
saying
right.
I agree with you that a lot of people have had really bad experiences, including myself.
Mhm.
And it's sad, and so I want to be that person who like listens, who understands, who finds the cause, the root issue, who reverses that and lets people get back into their life and do their thing and have their energy. And, because you have a call on your life and you're very specific to what you can do, only you on the planet, on the whole of millions of people, only you. But if you're not feeling well to do it, or you can't think clearly or have the energy to do what you're supposed to, what you feel you're supposed to be doing, then like it would suck to be here. And I felt like I wasted 7 years of my life, like really wanting to be in bed the whole time. Well, that's not any kind of fun life.
It was 18 for me.
Wow, that sucks.
Yes. And so I'm really hoping that the people that are listening here are open-minded about looking into a naturopath. And I'm hoping that people are going to, by hearing you, that need somebody that the other practitioners that they've seen have failed them, look you up. Because I can't tell you how many times I feel failed with, and I know so many other people feel failed with, because even like you said, let's say you spend your entire out of pocket, or let's say you don't even have health insurance, and you get to a spot where you don't get answers. It's because everybody has given up and said, I don't know what it is. And instead of referring forward or continuing to find an answer, you get dropped, or you get an answer at that amount. And they say this is what it is, but you don't get any further help from there either. And unfortunately, there's too many people out there that think that when they're coming to a naturopath, it's the last resort. I'm ready to give up. I'm willing to try anything now.
Yeah, that sucks.
And that is really sad, because from the things that you talk about, and I know there's many more things that we can hit here. Um, you're working on a body on multiple levels, um, energetic levels, other ways that your body and your spirit need to be treated to align with a healthy outcome. I hope I'm saying that.
Yeah, no, that's
Like,
perfect.
you called it quantum wholeness.
Hmm.
I think that's a really good way of describing it. Body, mind, and spirit, in order to be optimally healthy, should all be aligned, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting is, and I didn't know this until I got into this like space, that there's something called a conversion disorder. And what that is 86% of all physical issues are actually emotional or trauma like based. And I know for me, when I did my first biofeedback, I came up with there was 28 different traumas lodged in my body that were causing physical issues. And once we were able to clear the trauma, the physical issues just dissipated completely, because they're very connected.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize how much emotions play a part in the physical body. And there's different ways that we can clear it. The frontal lobe is right here, and behind that is your limbic system. That limbic system is kind of the librarian of the body. And as we are bombarded really with stimuli all day long, like, the temperature, the lights, the sounds, electronics, like all the things, situational things with family members or friends and work, and the limbic system the whole brain takes all the stimuli, and at 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. it'll do like a massive dump and get rid of any stimuli that isn't important for us to hold on to, because we're these quantum computers that record everything, right? And we don't need all of this information. You don't personally need to know what color shirt the lady at the checkout counter was at Walmart with, and what sound was playing, and what temperature was in the room when you were there that day, and what song was playing on the radio in the background, or whatever. Like, that's easily like, oh yeah, we don't need that. Let's focus on the things that we need to. And if we don't, if during that 3 to 5 a.m. we do hold on to some things that are a little bit more important, number one, but also things that are traumatic tend to stick a little
Yep.
more, and they don't go away. And usually if it's something that's really like repetitive, like over and over, some bad situation keeps happening, or if it's something sudden, like dramatic, like an accident of some kind, or a death, or you know something crazy, that tends to stick a little bit more. If it's something negative from a prominent person in your life, like a father figure, or a father or a mother, or coach or someone, and they did something terrible to you, that tends to stick a little bit more. um or abuse of that, there's so many, there's like 5 or 6 major things, and then there could be combinations of all those things. So it could be like something suddenly that happened with a coach or a pastor or something, and then it became repetitive. So those things will have more, even more stick. And what happens is that limbic system goes, hey, you know what? She's really not in a good place to like defrag this, to process. So we're going to put this somewhere in the body until she's ready, and then it'll go wherever it decides, and or whether that person decides. And what happens is when you run into something similar throughout the day, could be a year later, 6 months, 6 years, 6 decades later, if you run into something along the same lines, it will trigger that body part and symptoms start happening. And instead of us looking at those symptoms and going, hey, this is a message for me to clear that thing that happened 6 years ago, we we are kind of not trained to let that be the first thing to think about. And instead, a lot of times people will go to a doctor and go, hey, my knee or my arm or whatever the situation is. And then they're like, oh, let me give you this drug. And so, like you had mentioned earlier, for whatever reason, we tend to put this on the very last, like, okay, we've tried everything, so let's go to the naturopath. I think that's a program, I think that's just all them commercials and what we've been, brought up in. I think, maybe back in the 30s or 40s or earlier 1900s, it was a lot more acceptable, and or to do natural things, and what your grandma ate and did, and take some magnesium, or
Mhm.
and there's a lot less interference too, because we didn't have all the computers and the electronics, and television commercials. And the United States and New Zealand are the only two countries that even allow pharmaceutical commercials. And there's a lot of programming that goes on with that. So yeah, that conversion order and emotions, that is part of the biofeedback. And we can see exactly what emotions are stored, and it doesn't tell us where, but we can kind of get an idea just based on what's going on with symptoms. And when I started working with frequency long distance, I went down from 28 markers and being on 33 meds, and dropped down to 4 markers of emotions, and got off all my meds, dropped 80 pounds. And I mean, my life was completely changed, because I was like, oh my gosh, I have energy. I can actually think. I can do things. I can be with my kids. I can be present. And I wasn't constantly thinking about pain and like how to get better.
Right. I did have a similar experience to that as well. I was paying for some place that my insurance wouldn't even pay for, and I did do big leaps and bounds. Um, and that was with a chiropractic neurologist. But it was a big part of the journey that helped me a great deal, but it was only a part of the journey, as I went. But what when you're saying about the stored and trapped parts in the body, I know people that this is so relevant to, and it makes my heart hurt for them because, I know people with severe anxiety that's always in the fight or flight mode, or PTSD, someone with BPD, and well, I feel like I know that those are unresolved traumas stored in the body. But it's just keep increasing and taking more medications and keep checking out and keep checking. When I say checking out, I know that
Yeah.
it's self-care. I know that's what it's for, but they're also then saying, I don't feel present.
Hmm.
You know, could you imagine having to be on that cycle of taking benzos, Xanax, or whatever, and trying to keep your anxiety levels down, but then at the same time regretting that you're not present? I, I just, I don't, I just feel sad about that.
Well, and the side effects aren't just not being present or thinking clear, but I mean, if you listen to those commercials, the very things for depression are often the things that cause more depression and or suicidal thoughts and or even like worse. And it's like, wow. like,
Part.
I mean, a lot of these pharmaceuticals, the side effects are death. Whether it's depression or anything, fill in the blank. It's like, they go through the list and they do it really, really quiet and they go by really, really fast. And sometimes these commercials are like cartoons and like everyone's in this like flowery field with butterflies and they make it all like happy
Right?
and,
Right.
but then they're like side effects, blah, 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 blah. It's like, really?
Real quiet while everything else was so much louder. Yes. Because they're probably using that. I was talking on one of the podcasts that I was recording yesterday, that AMSR, and that's what that is, that advertising is those subliminal programming and creating of feelings intentional, like you said, with the butterflies and the singing and the dancing and this and that, and it just bleh, makes me want to throw up. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you, I know that, we're on a time schedule, but we talked a little bit about your remote services, um, like the biofeedback, did we talk about conscious coaching?
No. And then what I do with that is I just kind of talk therapy. I listen to what people are saying, and I can usually detect what belief system may be stuck there in the subconscious. And I kind of act as a sounding board. If someone says something, I'll say it back to them. And usually they don't even realize what they said or what was stuck there. And I'm like, oh, did you hear yourself say this or whatever? And or body language, because we will do things and say things that we think we mean, but really they mean something completely different. And then we can retrain that. And the way I look at it is if you're having issues with partnership, that's going to affect money. If you're going to have inner problems with money, then that affects partnership. I mean, I think sometimes in the Western world, again, part of programming can be that this doesn't affect that and this doesn't affect that. And these are all separated, and it's not all separated. It's like there's not a smoking section. There's not, if you pee in the pool, it gets everywhere. There's not like a
I
way.
love that.
Yeah. So, people be like, oh no, my health is great, but everything else is great. If I could just get my health, it's like, no, that affects everything when your health is out or if your partnership is out. It seeps through all of the things because we are a whole being and there's not a separation. And there's not a separation between me and you either. So it affects the collective. And the more that we work on ourselves individually, the better the whole collective is. And eventually, if we could all just be doing what we're supposed to be doing in a healthy way, there can be a tipping point where we're like, hey, we're actually in New Earth and the Golden Age because everyone is there, or a majority. And
I can't
that's,
wait for it.
I know I can see, and that's what I mean. Like that's something that you just said automatically. I can't wait for it, but that means you can't wait for it, right? So that's just an example.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like
Not
when
not
you're
right or wrong. Like I was just working with a lady last week, and her and her husband are having issues because he wants more kids and she doesn't. And we started talking about something, and she said, what did she say? She said, I don't want to. When I asked her about something, she was like, no, I don't want to. And I said, did you hear what you said? And she's like, no. And I said, you don't want to. And she was like, oh. And I'm like, yeah, so there's something there that you don't want more than one kid. She had one kid and she wasn't even talking about kids, but she said, I don't want to. Or people who say things like, I don't get people or I don't get it. Like that cancel clear isn't the best terminology and or can be a program. It's like, oh, okay, well, what else are you not getting? Because like maybe the person's not getting clients, but her mindset is, man, I just don't get people. It's like, guess what? You won't get people then.
I love that you bring manifestation into it.
You know what I mean? So it's
Yes.
like that if that is your standing wave, that's what you're putting out, then you will technically also not get people and you will not have a business. Because if you need people to do business, but you don't get people, meaning, and I know it's a play on words because what the person meant was, I don't get people, like I don't understand people. But what they were saying is, I don't get people. And those are two different things. And maybe that she didn't even realize she was thinking that way and saying that and creating that space because whatever radiates out, she also gets a magnet to or doesn't because we only get what we are.
Right.
So I like to listen and hear if there's any patterns in word structure that could be blocking abundance, and or partnership. Like, if you don't get people, that includes partnership. It's like, oh, well, when's the last time you had a date? You know, and
Yeah.
things like that, where people just say like, oh, I can't. It's like, well, how long you want to do that? So listening to conscious language and coaching through, whether a person is trying to get promoted at a job or get partnership. I mean, I've had so many people get married and or engaged. I just had a couple coaching sessions. Like literally, we just get rid of all the blocks. We realize what people are thinking, what they're saying, what their belief systems are. And once those things are reverse engineered, it's like everything comes in that they've been really wanting, but their subconscious has been blocking in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that you use that approach because there are so many people that don't understand the power of thought and words. You know, you're bringing that realization of you have the power for that change. And I love that.
Yes. And upgrade. You said there's so many people that don't realize the power of thought and word, and so far, anyway. And I would love for everyone to be aware of the power of thought and word because that would make a better world
It
when we
would.
remember.
Yes. Um, would you like to tell about your deck and your books?
Yeah, yeah. So my newest book is The Science of Miracles, and it kind of goes into a lot of what we're talking about, like so far. I had an encounter and I was given all these formulas, this whole download of words and graphs and things that I honestly didn't even know anything about. I had to look up to see. It was like, what does that word mean? Um, and so we've been able to see and report and record so many miracles that people have had and just made that shift to have a life of miracles. And everything from bilocation to returning lost items to partnership to money, um, creating businesses, books, ideas. This is a really fun tool for people to remember and get back into. And it's also made I created it, excuse me, on a very low level communication wise. And people, so my kids could use it. Because whenever I put it together, I was like, oh, I think we should be taught this in school. And people are using it in homeschool, and my kids started really little applying it and saw some really great things happen over their lives. And then as far as the card deck, I was going to make a book about crystals and the power of crystals and essential oils and the marriage of those two things, especially with decrees, because decrees, like you said, words have power. And when we're using frequency of any kind, if you have multiple layers of frequency, then it helps with the standing wave to get a better result faster. Um, and when I started really I started out looking at oils first and seeing that, there's frequency and different paths that certain oils would work on certain different things specific. And then I was like, oh, crystals do that too. And then I realized some crystals work better with some oils. And I tried really hard to find a book that had both. So I could just look up something really easily and go, oh, this oil works best with that one. But I found a lot of reference guides on oils and a lot on crystals, but nothing that had them together. And I definitely didn't find one that had decrees in it as well. So as I would find something, I would go, okay, and I kind of just started a list and go, these two work together, these two work together. Okay, what would I add as far as a thought process with that? Okay, I'm going to add this, and then people started asking to put this in a book form, and I was going to do that, and then I realized, kind of not by accident, but synchronicities are part of my everyday. That with each word and or imagery, it carried the same frequency as um just actually having the real life thing.
Mhm.
So if someone has a whole book, you could bring the whole book with you, but if it was broken up into cards, then my daughter can carry this card with her to school and put it in her backpack, or I can put this in my purse for the day, or put it in my car, put it in my dog bed, with my dogs asleep in it, or stick it in a plant, or, kind of separate out the book to be utilized in multiple places instead of, having multiple books in multiple places. Stick it underneath the pillow at night, stick it in your mattress, put it in your back pocket, carry it to work with you and not have to carry 29,000 pounds of crystals and oils in your suitcase when you travel. And believe me, my husband was like, thank you. I don't want to carry all this around anymore because he's so helpful in getting my luggage around when
Pockets
we
and such can
travel.
only hold so many.
Yes.
So
And
I
I
think,
tend to pick up more when I go to places too. I'm like, oh, that needs to come home with me. And then he's like, okay, can we just not? So what I didn't anticipate and or think about until after is all of these are actually mine. So now that people have these in their home, they actually have my personal stash of crystals in their houses, which is kind of fun. But it basically, each card will go into the physical and emotional and mental abilities that the crystal has. But then it also gives a decree that is best suited for that. And then it also gives four companion oils that best suited. I was going to do one, but so many crossover that it's like, you know what, maybe you don't have that one. So if you have this one, it'll work too, and this one will work too, and this one. So I try to give some variety in case people don't have like a billion oils or a billion crystals. Um, and putting this in your field is just as powerful as actually putting the real life crystal in your field, which I was just like, wow, I did not anticipate that until I had went to one of my doctors and it said that I think it was a vitamin D that I needed. And so he put the vitamin D in my field, and then I actually went weak instead of strong. And it's like, okay, it's showing you need vitamin D, but this is making you go weak. And so he actually went through and he was like, is it the color of the label? Is it the bottle? And then he went through and broke down every single word and muscle tested me on each word. And it turned out Ecuador was on the bottle. And I had like a close to death experience in Ecuador and a trauma related with that. And so my body would go weak when that bottle was in my realm.
wow.
And so I was like, wow, how many things are we like seeing, hearing, experiencing through a word or a song or whatever, label on your clothes, fingernail polish, whatever, like that we are not even aware that are causing our body to go weak, because it's not like we're testing all the time.
Right.
And but that also was like, I immediately was like, okay, not the book. I'm going to do the card, because this is something so easy to just throw in your bag for the day instead of a whole book.
So where can we get one of those? Where can we get your books? Where can we get that deck?
Yes, so if you go to Dr. Sharneal, it's Dr. Sharneal, SHARNAEL.com. I have my books there, I have workshops. My podcast is every Thursday at noon, and you can find all the information about the podcast at the website. All my services are there as well if you want to do something remote or biofeedback, or any kind of coaching session, and we can get to the bottom of what's going on and reverse that. And reverse meaning have a new song, have a new life, rescript, your authorship and your creativity, and get back into alignment with the frequency of love. There's books there. I mean, there's just a lot of different things. There's a lot of other free stuff there too.
Thank you so much for sharing the amazing things that you do. Is there anything else that you would like to add that we haven't covered?